welcome to the 11th episode of the monthly KatKnits knitting podcast. In this podcast, I chat about all things knitting and yarn and patterns and all that fun stuff. I'm currently obsessed with knitting, and maybe since you're watching this, you might be too. It is now early November in Vancouver, and I know I'm about a week late, but the reason for that is I wanted to finish this sweater. So the weather has officially become fall, which always makes me feel a bit more like staying inside and knitting while having a nice warm cup of tea, and also wearing all my hand knit sweaters. One of the tasks that I have for today is to go through and wash all my hand knits and also block the ones that are still needing to be blocked. But this sweater, so this is the Flower Power Cardi by Cherry Kubat. And as you can see, I have almost finished it. I still have about a million ends to weave in, but I wanted to wear this for my Halloween costume on October 30th. So I was someone from the 70s, which is kind of a bit of a lame kind of Halloween costume, but it was nice to kind of have a due date for the sweater and to push through. So I had part of a sleeve done, like maybe up to here, last time I filmed, and I mentioned that I wasn't a big fan of the colors. So after chatting with a couple of my girlfriends, I ended up swapping out the colors, and I'm so much happier with this. So I ended up going with really the darkest color to go right against this cream, just to give more of a contrast. And I think if you look at the picture that comes with this pattern, the Flower Power Cardi, you'll notice that now the colors really match kind of what the designer originally intended, which makes sense that now it looks better. But so this is, my main color is Savvy by Dream in Color, and that colorway is called Fable. And then my flowers, and then also the collar, is done in Rasta by Malabrigo. So these are both super bulky yarns, and they're both 100% merino. And the Malabrigo, this I believe is Ochre, this is Valentine, and then this is Neptuno. And this cardigan, it was a lot of fun to make. So I learned quite a few things. One of the things that's cool about it is actually knit kind of from left to right. So I cast it on here, knit the sleeves, and then did some like increasing, some splitting, knit across the back, cast on here, moved this way, joined together, and then finished on this sleeve. But one of the things that's a bit hard when you have a design going this way is that you can't really, it's harder to make adjustments. So one thing that unfortunately happened is this sweater is designed to use 3 different needle sizes, and the smallest size is what you cast on in. And I had my 3 needles out, so I cast on in the smallest size, but then unfortunately, when I switched sizes to start knitting the body of the sweater, I only went up 1 needle size and not to the largest needle size that was called for, which of course affected my gauge. So I did my gauge swatch in the correct needle, and I had gauge, but now that I knit this in a size, I think it was like 1 or 2 millimeters smaller needle, this fabric is a lot more dense, so it's a lot smaller. And then to actually get the length that was required in parts of the pattern, I had to knit more rows, so I used up more yarn. So although I actually had, like, I think I almost had 50 or more grams than what I needed in my main color, I got so close at the end. I ended up actually using my gauge swatch to finish one of these bands because I was so worried about running out of yarn. It did cause a slightly different fit, so I'll stand up here. So as you can see, it would, since this number of stitches, now my gauge is smaller. Goose is sniffing my leg at the moment. But so what it will do is actually cause it to be a bit more cropped. So what I did is I ended up doing some extra length in the bottom ribbing so that my sweater was longer. And you can mainly see this in the back. I'm hoping that when I block the sweater, I'm gonna kind of like tug down the back just to, again, give it that extra length that it needs. actually pretty happy though with the way the sleeves work. So I think for me, I like that they're a bit shorter. Like I like that they're almost verging on like 3/4 length sleeves, and the volume of the sleeve is a bit smaller because I accidentally chose the smaller needle. It's kind of funny. I feel like each time I knit a project, I make one new mistake and learn from it. So this one was the wrong needle size. I'm not surprised that I did it. And you know what? I think it worked out. I actually realized I was on the wrong needle size all the way over here when I was partway through this flower. I was just surprised at the amount of main color I had used, and that was kind of my first hint that something was wrong. And as soon as I pulled out my swatch and looked at it, it was visibly looser. Like you could just tell from looking at the swatch that it did not at all look like what the main body of my sweater was looking like. So the other thing that I got to do with the sweater, besides the like unique construction, is intarsia. So both the ginormous flowers on this sweater are intarsia. And what that means is you're knitting color work flat, and since you're knitting back and forth, you're actually using like parts of balls. So for instance, if we're looking at this daisy here, when I was going across like through this middle section, I'd have one of the dark purple balls that I would just knit this couple stitches with. Then I would have one of these light pinks. Then I would have another purple ball. So what I did is I actually split the one skein into 4 little skeins. So that's what I mean when I say one ball. Then I would have one for the orange or yellow, sorry. And then I'd have another one for the next dark purple, another one for the light pink, and then another for the purple, as well as 2 for the main colors. So I don't know how many that was, maybe 7 balls that I'd be knitting with at once. So as you can imagine, there's a little bit of a yarn mess going on, but it also made it more exciting the further I got in the daisy, because I got to like cut that yarn and then just put it away. So it slowly got, more and more difficult and then easier again. But that is why I have a million ends to weave in. I actually started doing a couple of these, and the fun thing that I learned from doing my other bulky yarn sweater with KnitCollage is you can felt in the ends. So I did a little bit of that for the ends that were just very visible when I wanted to wear it. So I felted in the ends kind of for the edges and the wrists. So I weave in the yarn, and then I just felt in the end just to make it stick. As you can see, I have a lot more to go. So I mentioned that I added a little bit of additional length, but other than that, I didn't modify the pattern at all. Well, except for, of course, the needle size. That, I guess, was a pattern modification. The other thing I did do is, since I then just was not sure really what needle size to use for the ribbing, I ended up going back down to the smallest for here, and then I used the same needle size that I did on the sweater for this ribbing, but I kind of regret that. I don't quite like the look of it, so I think I am going to rip this out and go back and do this in the smaller needle. I was just noticing that today when I put it on, that I think I can improve it a little bit. So there's still a little bit to be done with the sweater before I'm super happy with it. It's super warm because it is a super bulky yarn in 100% merino. Like right now, I'm very toasty in it, but that's okay. The other things that I wanted to mention, because this was knit flat, I got to use mattress stitch to seam it together. And mattress stitch, I didn't realize how well it worked for joining 2 pieces of like stockinette. So you can't even, I don't think you can tell where the seam is in here, but the seam actually, I can feel it, is right here. You can kind of maybe see it based on how the yarn kind of like goes in and then bulks up. But you just kind of go under the bar of each stitch, and you kind of go back and forth, and when you pull it tight together, it's like magic how well it works. And it's a very clean looking seam, so that's what the inside looks like. So it worked really well when I was joining yarn kind of where the stitches were going like this. but there were parts of the sweater where I have some of it going this way and then going that way. It still actually, in my opinion, still looks pretty good. So you can see here that the seam kind of changes to the yarns going like this versus going like this. But yeah, it was not nearly as scary or as hard as I thought it was going to be. I mean, this is also a very thick yarn, so there were less stitches and it was very obvious, like the bars in the knitting, so that might kind of help. But yeah, I was just so surprised at how well it works. Like, it's awesome. I'm definitely not going to shy away from mattress stitch in the future. Yeah, so I'm very happy with how this turned out. The one thing I don't know yet how much I'm gonna wear this. I think it's a lot of fun, so I'm hoping I wear it a lot. But because in Vancouver we get so much rain when it's cold enough to wear this, it's gonna be one of those sweaters where I'm gonna have like spring, sunny spring and sunny fall is when I get to pull this out. So this was my big accomplishment for October. The other thing that I started is the WestKnits Mystery Make Along. So every year WestKnits does a shawl that's a mystery, and it's spread out throughout the month of October. So there's 4 clues in total, and each week you get a new clue. And each clue has an insane amount of stitches in it. I mean, that to me was part of the fun, is this idea, you know, can I actually keep up with the amount of knitting required? Spoiler alert, I didn't. So here is the beginning of the Westknit shawl. So this section here is clue 1, and then this section here is clue 2. Clue 1, I was reading the stats on it, so here I'll let you know. There was 22,000 stitches, and that is this section here. And one of the fun things about it is that it has these really funky braids, which are actually, so basically you're like, you know, this is a knit stitch here. So you have little knit stitches, and then you create like thicker yarn. So this would be like a thicker yarn, and then you knit that up. So it's like knit stitches within knit stitches, which is fun. As you can see though, there is a lot of binding off and binding on, or casting on, sorry. So it took a while. I think there was 14 repeats, which means there was 28. There's 28 of these. And then as you can see, there's 5 of them. So 28 times 5, I don't know what that is. A lot of these kind of thicker yarns. This clue I was able to finish, I think it was 2 weeks in, and then I started clue 2. So I ended up just kind of cheating here, and I did all this side. It's in the incorrect order, but I'll have the exact mirror image of this on the right hand side for clue 2. And clue 2 has even more stitches. So clue 2 had 29,000 stitches. I want to say clue 1 took me about 40 hours of knitting. Clue 2 went a lot faster. I don't know how long this took. I would guess like 15 hours, maybe 10 hours to do this one side. I knew as soon as I opened up clue 1, I mean, this is part of the reason why I joined. As soon as I opened up clue 1 though, and I saw that there was an I-cord cast on. So clue 1 started with this purple color here, and you did an I-cord of 125 stitches, and then you picked up stitches along that I-cord. And for me, I remember I actually ended up, before going to school, I woke up early so that I could take a look at the clue and maybe get started on the knitting. And I remember sitting there with my coffee being like, oh my gosh, Stephen West did not disappoint with the amount of detail that goes into this shawl. So I ended up knitting this with Fidley Dyeworks BFL sock yarn. So BFL is Blue Face Leicester, and Fidley Dyeworks is a local company. So this is my main color, which is Mia. And then I have this gray color, which is Alistar. And lastly, the contrast color, which is this pinky one. This is, what is it called? Harlow. I love this yarn. I just love, like, I didn't really realize that I've knit so much with like soft silky yarn. So anything that's like Superwash Merino, has silk in it, alpaca, those like really drapey loose yarns. But when you get a non-superwash yarn that has maybe a little bit more kind of stick to it, the balls stay together. So you have no issues. Like, I'll show in a minute my PCT hat, but the balls are constantly, the yarn is like falling off. But here, I'm just like, I have this in my Ho & Co bag. I have all of them. And look at how good that looks. I just toss it around and it just stays together. Something I wouldn't really expect to be such a difference and to give me so much joy. I realized like one of the things I want to explore more is non-superwash yarn. So I want to get a little more into different, like, get outside of just like merino basically and start looking at these different yarns. So this is the BFL, which I'm loving. The other great thing about choosing a sock yarn is I know that there's going to be quite a bit of leftover yarn and I can make socks out of it. So what I'll probably do is when I get a partial skein, I mean, I can do one of two things. I can either just do a toe up sock, and I think regardless I have to do a toe up sock, and then knit the foot of one sock, go over and knit the foot of the other sock, and then look to see approximately how much yarn I have left, and then knit up. So I'm doing the cuffs last. The other thing I could do, which I think is the route I'm going to go, is actually weigh the skein and then divide the skein exactly in half, and then that way I can just do the foot and knit into the leg part of the sock until I run out of yarn. I think I'm going to probably maybe even try a colorwork sock with the yarn that's left over. Anyways, I'm loving the yarn. Totally recommend it, and I'm definitely gonna buy more of it. In terms of finishing this shawl, as you can see, kind of in a month and a bit, I managed to do 1.5 clues, and I have 4 clues in total. I think I'm probably gonna get this done around Christmas, which I'm totally fine with. As I mentioned last time, I'm not a shawl wearer. And frankly, this design is also not really me. I love, when I looked at the other Mystery Knit Along designs, I think they're more my style. They're more kind of U-shaped, and then the pattern kind of goes downwards, like outwards. And to me, it just looks a little more cohesive. Whereas this one, I would say, is more of like a block, like a color blocking style shawl. So with the middle, we have this kind of like strong texture. And then we've got these wings that have like, this is twisted rib, this is garter, and then cable. And it's very kind of like blocks, like, and Westknits does have this kind of block like design. He has things like the vertices, blankets, and shawls where he's kind of sticking together pieces in unique ways. So I'd say like that isn't so much my style, which it's fine. I'm really enjoying this knit, and I will definitely be joining in next year. I think I'm probably going to make this an annual thing, and I think next year I'd like to try to really do it within the month, or at least put a little more effort in. Right now I have complete control over my time and I want to get school done, so I was really throttling myself, trying not to spend a lot of time knitting, even though clearly I said that I spent probably over 40 hours in the last month knitting this. But I think that's, I felt a bit guilty, unfortunately, just because I could be doing other things with my time, like schoolwork. So yeah, I'm, really happy with the yarn, really happy to be learning about all these new techniques. Like I learned about a new type of cast on called, I think it's the cable cast on. And then, I haven't done cables that looked like this. I also really like the twisted rib. Also, there's tons of I-cord, so I'm very familiar with that. And it's kind of fun to see too how all the pieces are put together, and also how Stephen kind of handles things. It's incredible. I don't know how he comes up with it. They're so cool. And there's short rows in here, and it was a new short row technique, so you can see that these are my gaps from where I've turned my work. So it was a new type of turn. I'm learning lots, and I'm being challenged lots, and that's why I'm gonna continue doing this as well. It just pushes me out of my comfort zone with the amount of knitting, what I'm knitting. And this year way I'll knit, you know, one shawl a year, which I think is a good amount. Plus, I think I'm gonna use this for Halloween next year. I was thinking this looks a little bit kind of witchy, like kind of spooky, almost like this is a bit like a web, and it's kind of almost looks like a bit like a bat. So I'm gonna make it my goal to try to incorporate this into my Halloween costume for next year. So I'll get used out of it that way. The other thing that's great about these knit-alongs is he creates videos that you watch for each clue. And in those videos, you get these kind of little nuggets of knowledge from him, and also just a little bit about his kind of style. And one of the things I really liked watching the videos is how he talks about, you know, like your stitch count might be off, which when I got about halfway up here, my stitch count was wrong in every single one of these sections, meaning I had missed either creating a stitch or, well, actually it must have been always creating a stitch, because I think I did the decreases correctly for the chevrons. And he just said, you know, you just like sneak in a little stitch. If you're off by a little bit, don't worry, just sneak in that increase. He has a very relaxed style. Also, like, you know, knit loosely. And I thought that was just way more fun. It's kind of stepping away from this has to be exactly perfect and more focusing on like the journey and enjoying the process, and then making just sure that your end result looks, to the human eye, it looks the same. And I don't think you can tell that I had made that many mistakes, and I've continued to make mistakes and then just slip it in. One of these ridges is, one of these dark sections is actually 2 rows longer than it's supposed to be. And somehow I ended up creating an extra stitch at one point. So one of these like twisted rib sections has an extra twisted section, but I don't think you can tell. And I'm not gonna, now that I've mentioned my mistakes, I won't zoom in too closely. But I just like that style of just, you know, keep going. Let's just fix things as it goes. It's not, we're not aiming for perfection here. We're just aiming to have it, you know, enjoy the process and have it done. So that has been so much fun to do. And I ended up also kind of favoring this for this, which is why I managed to get this done and only got to the end of clue 2, or halfway through clue 2 on the shawl. The other, I don't think there was anything else I wanted to mention for that. So as I mentioned last episode, I did start working at a yarn store, and I had done so well with not purchasing any yarn for almost the first 2 months, but I ended up caving. I found out that my niece is pregnant, which is so exciting, and it's the first baby in the family. So she is actually my stepsister's daughter. So that's why my stepsister is quite a bit older than me. So that's how I have a niece, and my dad is now a great grandpa, which I think, you know, he's getting older, and I don't know if he's quite, it's always hard, you know, and I think becoming a great grandpa is just that stage that you're in a different, you know, part of life, but it's very exciting. So I ended up trying to figure out what to knit her as a gift, because I love to do, when someone around me is having a kid, I think it's really special to give them something knitted. They live in Fort McMurray, and the baby is due in February. So for those of you that don't know, Fort McMurray is in northern Alberta. I think it's about 3 hours north of Edmonton, aka in February it will be cold. So what I did is I bought, I first found a pattern. That's my new rule with buying yarn, is have a pattern, then choose your yarn. So I ended up picking a PetiteKnit pattern, and I think this is like my 3rd or 4th PetiteKnit pattern, and it is the Selma sleeping suit. So it's this very cute onesie that has these buttons, and it's meant to be worn like over clothes while you're taking your baby in the stroller for a walk. And she knit it in white, and I just think white also is very cute on babies. So I ended up going with this yarn. It's Berroco Ultra Wool, and this I purchased from the yarn store during my shift. So I work at Urban Yarns, and they have a wonderful yarn selection. And this is one of their most popular yarns, and I haven't actually knit a lot with Berroco yarns, and I haven't knit at all with the Ultra Wool. And it's 100% wool, it's superwash, it's worsted weight. It's very bouncy and very soft. I'm very happy with it. I think it's like a great yarn to knit this baby sweater in. As you can see, actually, for whatever reason, my iPhone decided to stop recording, so I just lost the rest of my podcast. And then when I refilmed it again, it decided to stop recording again. So we're on round 3 here. I have disabled all communication, so it no longer has data or Wi-Fi, and I restarted it. So hopefully that will just fix the issues. But fingers crossed, because I think this is the last one I'm gonna be able to do today before I go kooky from saying the same thing over and over again. So it's a top-down suit, and this is like the top of the hood. And as you can see, I've just started. I've decided to do a 3 to 6 month old size, just to give the baby enough room to like wear lots of layers, and then also babies grow at different rates, and I just don't want it to be too small. Better to be too big than too small. Some other things though that I have purchased, because every week we get new fun little things into the store. And I did end up getting, and I wanted to show these. These are cute little stitch stoppers. I use these while knitting my shawl, which they give a little more purpose to that. I'm not really as worried about my stitches falling off. But these are actually from a Canadian company based out of Prince Edward Island. They make little stitches too, and it's called Fox and Pine. And I picked up the little deer, but I also found there's little sloths, which are super cute. And then they have foxes, llamas, sheeps, like avocados, lemons, lots of cute little stitch stoppers. I also picked up some more stitch markers, because you can just never have enough. I decided to go for the Coco Knits stitch markers, which I believe are just like metal that's been coated in plastic. And I got 3 different sizes. I love how thin these are, so I don't really have to worry about them making the stitch bigger. And I got like 3 sizes, so they'll fit on all the different needles, and they come in all these different colors. These are the pastel colors. Frankly, I did want the brighter colors, so I was slightly disappointed. But I do love these, and I think I might even buy another set of stitch markers because I love them so much. The last thing I caved and purchased is every year around Christmas time they get a set of Lothlorien gloves and hats, and I ended up getting a matching set in red just because I think, how cute is it to have a matching set of hat and gloves? So these are Merino possum blend, so very warm, very soft, very high quality. It hasn't quite been cold enough yet in Vancouver to wear them, but I do see that we're kind of dropping down to into the negatives. So I think I'll be using these, trying them out, seeing how I like them. All right, I'm gonna just double check to make sure it's recording right now. The other thing that I've just been making a little bit of progress on is my Pacific Crest hat. So that's a design that I've come up with, and right now I'm just knitting that final size. It's a 1x1 rib. I didn't make a heck of a lot of progress on this in the last month. I just knit a few more rows to get to the point where I'm ready to start doing the decreases for the crown. But this is with these yarns is where I really started to notice the difference between like the grippy BFL and then the Superwash. So this is 2 Sweet Georgia yarns, 2 DKs, and they both are their Superwash Merino, or they have Superwash Merino in them. I think this one actually has a little bit of silk as well. And then this is the Yershita Merino. And I cleaned these up yesterday, but it just falls off the skein so easily because it's so slippery. which means it's so soft and drapey and all those other wonderful things, but I just want to experiment more with those sticky yarns. My plan originally was to put this pattern out on Ravelry very soon, once I finish this hat, but I've now decided, so my thesis involves knitting and I'm going to do a survey. And on the page where you can optionally take the survey, I've decided that I'm going to post this pattern for free, just to encourage people to go check out the page. They don't actually have to do the survey, but just to get more numbers up. I am going to create a separate YouTube video when I do end up releasing this pattern. So if you are interested in getting this pattern for free, please subscribe. It'll probably be happening, you know, within, I'd say, it really depends on how long it takes me to do the survey, but definitely within the next few months. Yeah, and it fits great, which is awesome. This is the largest size. I'm really happy with the way it's turning out. Hopefully, not hopefully, I will have this done next month, because this is an important one that I need to do, but I've kind of been distracted / pulled away from other fun, shiny objects. The other thing that I started doing on September 1st is the first of every month, or as close to it as I can, for a year, I'm going to pull out my entire stash of yarn and lay it on the kitchen table. And then I'm gonna fill in this little log that I've got to see what stash yarns I have. So one of my big goals is really to get rid of my stash, or at least decrease it significantly. I keep my stash in these boxes, so I can't even see the yarn. It's all tucked away, and I'd rather be wearing it than storing it, basically. And I've, I spent a bunch of money on this yarn, so might as well get the full enjoyment out of it. What I do is, after laying it all out, I think the purpose of it is just for me to really get an idea of what I have, get excited about what I have and what I was planning on doing, and then really kind of steering me towards choosing to do a project with yarn that I already have. Also, I'm thinking over the course of this year, I might decide at the end of it, you know what? Some of this yarn I should really donate, because I'm not planning on getting to it. I think if I'm not planning on knitting with it, either within 2023 or 2024, it's time for me to let it go. So if you're into numbers, here are little stats. So September 1st, the beginning of this project, I started out with 43 full skeins of yarn. Surprisingly, 11 of those were sock weight yarn, so I categorized them by thickness, and I realized that's because I actually have 2 sweaters worth of yarn. So I'm going to do the Guthrie sweater by Boylan Knitworks, and then I'm going to do the Cumulus blouse by PetiteKnit. And I also have 6 full skeins of sock yarn. So 2023, lots and lots of socks. So from September to October to November, I went from 43 skeins to 39 to 34. Nice little decrease there, but I'm also keeping track of my works in progress, and I went from 4 to 5 to 6. And basically every time I start a work in progress, I take the yarn out of my stash, and now it's in like work in progress mode. So the numbers are a little skewed towards this works in progress. So I started kind of thinking about, now that we're in November, Christmas is coming up, end of the year is coming up, and really kind of focusing on, okay, where do I want to be project-wise? Where do I want to start the year off on? And I came across a couple things. One is I have these gifts that I would love to give for Christmas. So planning those out over the next 2 months. And the other thing is I'd really like to go back down to only having 1 work in progress. So my plans over the next 2 months, little siren going by. So my plan over the next 2 months is to, 1, finish off my 6 works of progress. So I've talked about a couple of them. I have the Stephen West Mystery Make Along shawl. I have my Pacific Crest hat and my Selma sleeping suit. The last 3 is I have this pair of socks. So this is also using the Fidley Dyeworks BFL sock. And this is the Cornish Cream Tea, I believe. Yep, Cornish Cream Tea socks by Helen Stewart. So this is actually one of the ones that I'd like to gift. And then I also have this sock, which is just pattern that I came up with, but it's to test out the shadow wrap heel. So that's 2 more, and then the last one is this. This is a baby surprise jacket by Elizabeth Zimmerman. I need to do some seaming as well as knit the hood and sew on the buttons. I also would like to really focus on, I have a couple projects that I have not blocked, so blocking my projects, also steaming them. So this is the Magic Mountain Cardi that I have not steamed yet nor sewed on the buttons. So I think I'm gonna use these next 2 months to really kind of tidy up, do like a little bit like spring cleaning, but fall/winter tidying up of all my projects, and maybe too like going through and putting all my stitch markers in one spot and all that kind of good stuff. For the Christmas knits, I am gonna finish the Selma sleeping suit, and then that pair of socks that I mentioned, the Cornish tea socks. And then lastly, I have another skein of the BFL Fidley Dyeworks, and I would like to gift knit another pair of socks, and I'm going to do the Drea Renee Knits Everyday Sock, which is a toe up ribbed sock. So those are kind of my, that's like my, now I've got my vision for the next 2 months. And if you notice, nothing in that vision requires buying any new yarn. So I'll try to keep myself accountable by saying I will not be buying any yarn for November and December. Even saying that is hard. Like, I don't even believe it when I say that, because I actually do have my eye on, I really would love to knit my husband a sweater. There's some yarn in the store that I'd like, Berroco specifically has some yarn. So we'll see, I think, yeah, I can't even commit to that. It's so funny. But I can commit to getting those 3 projects done and wrapping up my 6 works in progress down to 1. So I'll keep, maybe every 3 months or so, I'll kind of give a new little update of how my stash log is going. I'll share, I'll make sure to do a close-up of this in case anyone else wants to do something similar and see how their stash is going and where it's decreasing to. I'd love to hear about, you know, what you're up to for the rest of the year. Are you thinking about doing some Christmas knits? If so, what are those? I'm working in the store. Some people do whole sweaters to gift, which is just so sweet and generous. So what are you kind of planning for Christmas? Is there any projects that you're also, you know, trying to wrap up for the new year? Do you also think you have a big stash? I mean, these are all, I'm just curious. So please let me know. All right, well, that's everything. I hope everyone else is enjoying the new kind of knit-friendly indoor weather. You're kind of getting cozy, finishing up some projects. And thanks for tuning in. And I'm excited to catch up next week. And yeah, you can help me keep me accountable now for all the stuff that I've mentioned. Have a great week and month. Until next time, bye.